Good evening. Thank you for joining me. You're listening to the Media Speaks Radio. I'm your host, DLAKE for PREZ. Tonight, I just received a message on Facebook from a friend. I'm going to call him Big Castle. Big Castle sends me a message. Finally, your crazy friend says something tangible. This friend of mine, Big Castle, talks crazy a lot. But my crazy friend, and that's referring to Ron Paul, says something tangible. In other words, something that you can touch. So maybe this article hit home with him, my friend, who posts a link but then adds ... after the HTML before the word finally, but doesn't leave a space. So good job posting a link, pal. That link was wrecked, but DLAKE knows how to go to links on the internet and doesn't put ... after the HTML. So I managed to get to this page, news.yahoo.com. Let's take a look at it. This article at news.yahoo.com by Chris Good. Ron Paul, quote, "Our Constitution has failed." Now, Chris Good, ABC News, taking Ron Paul's words and deciding what his headline for this report was going to be. Okay, the word Constitution and the word failed. If we can get those in the same headline with Ron Paul's name, that'd be great. Republican Ron Paul, the iconic libertarian congressman from Texas. Didn't he just run Republican? They call him iconic libertarian congressman, but okay. Has delivered what will most likely be his final address to Congress. In a sprawling 52-minute speech to the House chamber, Paul lambasted U.S. government, politicians, and special interests. Good job, Paul. Declaring that the U.S. people must return to virtue before the government allows them to be free, and that the Constitution has failed to limit the scope of an authoritarian bureaucracy. Okay, so the Constitution has failed is the headline, but as I read this second paragraph, the Constitution has failed to limit the scope of an authoritarian bureaucracy. No, Paul, actually, they just ran roughshod right over that special and important document. Quote, "Our Constitution, which was intended to limit government power and abuse, has failed," Paul said. Founders warned that a free society depends on a virtuous and moral people. The current crisis reflects that their concerns were justified, end quote. For the retiring Republican, 77, Ron Paul, 77 years old, the, quote, "current crisis isn't quite what it is for the other members of Congress, who routinely used that word to describe the economic recession that followed the 2008 financial crash." And for me to decipher that sentence, Ron Paul knows what he's talking about, and the, quote, "other members of Congress" do not. To the Texas Republican, that's part of it, but the causes are deeper, and it's also a crisis of governmental authoritarianism and the vanishing of personal liberty. If it's not accepted that big government, fiat money, ignoring liberty, central economic planning, welfarism caused our crisis, we can expect a continuous and dangerous march toward corporatism and even fascism, with even more loss of our liberties, said Paul, an obstetrician, gynecologist by training. That's right, Ron Paul, he's delivered over 4,000 babies. Women, that's a beautiful thing. But legalizing a government monopoly for initiating aggression can only lead to exhausting liberty associated with chaos, anger, and the breakdown of civil society. We now have a standing army of armed bureaucrats in the TSA, CIA, FBI, Fish and Wildlife, FEMA, IRS, Corps of Engineers, etc. More than coercive, to Paul, the government is also corrupt. Quote, "All branches of our government today are controlled by individuals who use their power to undermine liberty and enhance welfare/welfare state and frequently their own wealth and power," end quote. Throughout his speech, Paul questioned not only the fundamental health of America's social compact, but specifies like fiat money, the power of the Federal Reserve, the Patriot Act, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act modifications, undeclared war, the illegalization of medical marijuana, mandatory sentencing requirements for drug crimes, the illegalization of hemp, TSA searches, federal debt and borrowing, the White House authority to assassinate those it declares terrorists, and the regulation of light bulbs and toilets in people's homes. You're gonna have a smart home, pal. In many ways, according to conventional wisdom, my off and on career in Congress from 1976 to 2012 accomplished very little, he said. No named legislation, no named federal buildings or highways, thank goodness. In spite of my efforts, the government has grown exponentially. Taxes remain excessive, and the prolific increase of incomprehensible regulations continues. Wars are constant and pursued without congressional declaration. So you might say, the old man failed, but I'd say he got ran over, and you're wrong. In thinking about the champions of liberty, his lesson is a bitter one. History has shown that the masses have been quite receptive to the promises of authoritarians, which are rarely, if ever, fulfilled. Paul left the podium for the last time, offering an answer to all of those problems, that people should choose liberty and limited government and seek change within themselves. The number one responsibility for each of us is to change ourselves with hope that others will follow. I have come to one firm conviction after these many years of trying to figure out the plain truth of things. The best chance for achieving peace, prosperity, for the maximum number of people worldwide is to pursue the cause of liberty. If you find this to be a worthwhile message, spread it throughout the land. And that's exactly what DLAKE for PREZ is doing, and that's exactly why I'm on themediaspeaks.com. And I know my fellow reporters, Kyle Phillips and Anthony Court, and our guests on the show. Check us out on the live show. Follow us on Twitter. Find us on Facebook, all over the internet, as seen on YouTube. All right? Thanks for listening to the Media Speaks Radio. Check out themediaspeaks.com. You know what? Kyle's doing a great job making a new website. And you know what? We find the message of liberty and pursuing the cause of liberty worthwhile, so we're going to spread this message throughout the land. Thanks to Ron Paul, and thanks to Big Castle for sending me this link, even though he didn't send it right. I got to this page, pal. Good job. Talk to you guys later. I'm DLAKE for PREZ. Have a good night. Peace.